Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 40 of Text Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're glad to have you here. It's Sunday morning, May 21st, 2018. We're broadcasting out of Elk River, Minnesota, which is it's about 2.5 hours south of Duluth. And Hibbing, yeah, it's probably about 2.5 hours south of Hibbing, too. If you want to go out to International Falls, you probably have about a 5-hour drive up to the Canadian border. So we're not really too far away from Canada. And personally, I've never been to Canada. Probably never going to go either. Not to say there's anything against it. It's just that it's not on my bucket list. Probably not something I'm ever going to do. And furthest up north I probably ever went was Thief River Falls, which was probably about less than an hour from the Canadian border. So, it was relatively close, but, not too far away, ladies and gentlemen. So, looks like we got some pretty sunny skies. Last night it was pretty gloomy all day. I think the highest temperature I got was about 60. It's pretty windy, too. You had to have a sweater, which was a little odd considering it was just 90 degrees for, 3 out of the 4 or 5 weekdays of the past week. But fortunately, we did finally have some rain on Friday evening, probably shortly after the 39th broadcast out of the hen house. Thankfully, the hens were well behaved. They didn't kick around a bunch of dust, so the suit is still relatively clean. The insanely expensive camera lens is still clean. The tripod is clean. And that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, we probably will try to do some more mobile filming. Now, unfortunately, as I've alluded to in the past, we're not going to be able to include other individuals in the show because most likely I'll probably say something at some point that'll be embarrassing to be associated with me. Pretty much happened with just about everybody I know, so I assume that the same thing would happen with this show, ladies and gentlemen. Now you'd think at an advanced age you'd eventually learn and figure out what not to and not to say and what not to and not to do. But the fact is, the world is dynamic, it's ever changing. I'm always experimenting with what you can and can't do. Now that's not to say just intentionally do bad and stupid things and see what happens. It just means, expand your horizons a little bit. Talk to people or things you don't normally talk to, do people or do things that you don't normally do, and just live life, basically. Live and let live. It's just not. Yeah, if you want to go to the same place every single day and then just go home and watch TV, that's totally fine. Now, yeah, if you working is probably a necessity of this life to serve God, to serve your country, to serve your family and all that, and to make yourself great again. But the reality is, it is good to be adventurous every once in a while, and then just to try to get out of your comfort zone every once in a while. Now, yeah, sometimes you're going to look like an idiot, sometimes you're going to be belittled, but trust me, for personal experience, when you've been embarrassed and mocked and ridiculed enough, it just doesn't even really matter anymore. Yeah, it kind of sucks at times too, but you learn how to take it and give it too, so. And, sometimes, and if people can use you to mock and ridicule to provide better entertainment for them, then that's maybe the role you need to fill in this life or in that situation too. So it is important to know what your role is, maybe to shut your mouth, or just to, maybe get an insanely expensive camera and run a talk show for an hour, or for 4 days a week, 1 hour every day. Now you probably noticed the last couple of shows I was a little down on energy, and maybe it appeared that I was down on my luck. The reality was, 38th episode, we ran that Tuesday. Went Thursday night. It's probably about 90 degrees in here. It's pretty dark and dim, and I was a little tired that day. But you'll have that every once in a while. So we're just gonna continue to move forward, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're gonna probably try to fix the audio. But the reality is, when I've looked at external mics to buy, you got good, better, best, great, professional, and I'm not really sure how they sync up with the insanely expensive camera. And prior to having our sponsorship deal, I was a little leery about spending hundreds of dollars on a microphone that doesn't really work with the camera. But I think what I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm going to go ahead and buy the nice, whatever, few $100 microphone, see how well it works out with this camera. If it doesn't appear to work with this camera, then I can maybe start using the microphone to experiment with some other video list broadcast, podcast, talk shows, and all that stuff too. So it's always good to have a backup plan. Like if you buy a monster truck to go on the Monster Jam tour, but they don't want you on the tour, and then you find out that you can just drive it around, or you can contract it out and have local shows or go to local fairs. So that's why it's good to have a backup plan, ladies and gentlemen, because plan A does not always work. Plan B and C probably may not always work either. So that's why it's good to have multiple plans. Now, if plan A is such a grand plan that it'll complete your life and be the light of the sun in your galaxy, then by all means you probably should go pedal to the metal, balls to the wall to make sure plan A gets done and the job is accomplished and the task is achieved. Because I mean, you only get one life, one shot to make it right, so you got to put your best foot forward and see what happens, see where it carries you. Now, you're not always going to be able to go 100% all the time. You need 8 hours a day to sleep, you need a few hours a day to eat food. But that's the thing. I mean, if you're sleeping properly, that's going 100% because you're making sure you're not dialed in any tech devices an hour before bedtime. You're not, and we have some research articles here about insomnia that I'll get into a little later. But the fact is, we have a few tips for better sleeping and stuff. But the fact is, paying attention to what you eat, the sources of it, maybe spending a few $100 to get some organically grown cow and have the meat in your freezer for the whole year, and you can always have that at your disposal. Just having healthy sources of nourishment is a huge difference. And yeah, I mean, if you live in the big city nights, big city lights in a coffin apartment, you can still go out to farms and get cheese or goat milk or cow milk and cow meat and venison and all that garbage, and then stick it in your freezer and be a healthy person. Now, yeah, you'll probably want to get outside and walk around a little bit more, and maybe have some type of microwave attenuating device around your bedroom so you're not sleeping in a microwave essentially. There are necessary precautions you can take to being a healthy person, even if your living environment isn't favorable towards that. And then the other thing too is, you're going to have things in your house that emit toxic fumes. Like, for example, finished cabinetry, it emits PCBs, polyethylene. I forget what it abbreviates, but it's some weird complicating word that Monsanto used to produce back in the good old days, and now it's produced from mixing the glues that they make these cheap cabinets with, and then it off-gasses as it's new, and over time it eventually fades, but it's still always prevalent. So that's another thing too. Just make sure you have high quality materials in your house or coffin apartment. And if you're looking to buy a new house or move into a coffin apartment, that's probably another thing to consider too, because I mean, yeah, you want it to be comfortable, you want it to meet you want all the vanities to meet your desires and everything too, but it's important to be healthy, because if you're not healthy, you can have what appears to be the best of the best and still be a miserable person. You'll see it a lot, millionaire, billionaire guy doesn't like himself and does a lot of bad, weird things because he's probably not healthy. I mean, anyone who's a healthy person, irregardless of your monetary worth or your materialistic possessions, they're fairly healthy people, or they're fairly happy people. See, health equals happiness, and so that's why I try to advocate for healthy lifestyles here. Because if you're a healthy person, you're going to be a better neighbor, you're going to be a better citizen, you're going to be a better friend, a better person, a better family member, just all around a better. Everybody else will experience better things in their life if you're a healthy person. Now, one of the poison pills about being an advocate for healthy people is that it does feel a little bit like you're whispering into the wind, because a lot of people that are watching this show are probably so unhealthy and maybe not necessarily dumbed down, but the attention span is probably about 5 minutes total, and they just have no incentive to actually make themselves better. They feel it's very burdensome. You just want to go to work 8 hours a day, go home, sit down, relax, drink some alcohol or some wine, or shoot up on some pharmaceutical prescription, or maybe even get some recreational drugs out the street, and then just hopefully drown your sorrows. Well, the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, the path to health, think of it as, well, for one, it's a daily battle. It's something you do every single day. I mean, there are a few things that I have to do every single day that I have to come to grips with. For example, on Friday night when it rained, I was thinking, okay, the ground will be saturated. If the rain penetrates deep enough, it'll be a great day to go weeding on yesterday. So I went ahead, Saturday I went out and weeded for a few hours, and unfortunately the ground wasn't really wet enough to get the full roots out of most of the weeds. Now that's why you want to pull weeds after it rains, even maybe during during rain. It's kind of fun to be outside when it's raining. Yeah, you're gonna get extremely dirty, but that's all right. So one thing, as you're pulling weeds and everything too, you're thinking, okay, yeah, if I pull weeds, I won't have to pull weeds ever for the season. But the fact is, pulling weeds is it's a cyclical. It's routine. You'll have to do it probably once every couple of weeks at the minimum. And it's just something you got to accept. It's life is a war. Every day is a battle. And then there are things you just got to do consistently. You got to go to sleep every single day. You got to eat healthy food every single day. You don't really have to lift weights or do. Well, I mean, you should do some type of exercise most every day. You lift weights 3 days a week, and then go outside and walk around for a few hours every other day. So there are routine now. It's sort of a saving grace and a bit disheartening too. But I mean, eventually your life will come to an end. So if you keep that in mind, it's not so difficult to indulge in these routine activities. Now that doesn't mean just get involved in monotonous activities and then be bored all the time because you're doing the same thing every single day. It's important to get outside of your comfort zone. Maybe grow some new plants, stick some new flowers in the ground, try out some new fruit trees, or get a sheep or get some chickens, or get some other kind of animals, a ferret, hamsters, lobsters, raccoons, possums, foxes, coyotes, wolves, giraffes, rhinoceroses, hippopotamuses, crocodiles, alligators, pterodactyls, tyrannosaurus rexes, anacondas, titan boas, boa constrictors. Just get something new to keep yourself excited and to keep your mind occupied and just trying to think about positive things. Now, yeah, it's not. Every once in a while, you're going to have lulls in your life. You might accidentally drink a whole bunch of fluoride and then you feel really crappy later on in the day, or it's 8 p.m. on a Saturday night and you have absolutely nothing to do because it rained and all the racetracks are closed, so now you're just sitting around thinking, well, geez, what am I going to do now? Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be those times, those low points. It's like a sine wave. You got the peaks and the troughs. It's just our whole job and objective is to. If you look at any electrical signal that comes out of the wall, or just an alternating current signal, it has a DC offset and then it has the sine wave that goes up and down. So our whole objective is just to raise the DC offset a little bit, because you're never going to eliminate the troughs and the sine wave. And of course the peak, it's good to ride the peaks too, to enjoy them as well. Challenge, success, reward. Those are three principles that I've always. Well, maybe not always, but probably the last 5 years I've mainly focused on those three things. And if ever I'm going to do something, I kind of ask myself, is it challenging? And then if it is, try to be successful at it, stay focused on it, and hopefully enjoy the fruits of the reward. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be some athletic endeavor or some other competitive endeavor. It could be something as simple as planting broccolis in your garden. It's going to be challenging to bend over and put all the plants in for a couple hours, but it's important to stay focused on how you're spreading them out, how you're putting them into the ground, how you're watering them, if you're adding additional dirt to them. Just those things that's important to be successful. And then when they finally do grow up into mature plants and you're taking the florets off to eat them, then that's the reward. So just basic things like that. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to join some master's swimming program and then go swimming every single day and try to be really good at that. No, you absolutely can though. If you got a lot of free time, but during the winter, for example, there's a lot more free time in Minnesota. So I mean, usually in wintertime, I'll always get the knack to maybe go to a pool or something every couple of weeks, because back in high school I did the whole swimming thing that was probably about 7 days a week. You get pretty into that kind of stuff. In high school, it wasn't really important to read books or to actually learn anything. It was just try to find a hobby and try to find people to hang out with, and then that was basically what I did. And then, of course, spending a lot of time on AOL Instant Messenger. I always kind of had to wonder how much of how much addictive qualities those have, because a lot of people say like, oh, I disconnected from Facebook, and I always think like, well, that seems kind of silly. I mean, as long as you're balancing it out, it can be a very valuable tool. Now, yeah, if you're on there for 5 hours a day and not really doing anything, or not really posting anything or reading anything, and just waiting for something to happen when it's probably never going to happen, then yeah, it's probably not a very good probably not a very good activity to indulge in. But I mean, well, yeah, I mean, if you're going to challenge yourself, just make sure that there is the possibility for success too. If you're going to try to make the NBA 30 years old, unless you're 7 feet tall, it probably ain't going to happen. Now, yeah, that doesn't mean you can't join some intramural basketball team and, be a decent player there. That's definitely an option. But, most later on in life, I found that maybe not necessarily productive endeavors are more rewarding. For example, when you grow your own food, then you don't have to buy it from the store, and then the food is available for other people to buy. Maybe people that don't have acres of land to plant garbage. So that's why it's a good thing to try to not really take advantage of what you have, but to try to use what you have and to get as much as you can out of it. Now, obviously, you want to be symbiotic too, rather than just like the federal government that just tries to leech off of everybody else. It's important to work together with the land, the Lord, the neighborhood, and all that too, because it's just things will always come back at you. Now, as far as whether karma is real or not, it seems like it probably is. I mean, at the very minimum, it's a state of mind that it puts you in. I mean, if you do harm on others, there's always, maybe not to everybody, but probably to most people, there's always that thought in the back of their mind, like, hey, what's going to happen to me now that I committed a pernicious act towards somebody else? So, I mean, whether karma actually happens or not, I mean, I'm not really sure. Because, I mean, back in my younger days, there's a few times where I might have tipped over a BFI or, hit a mailbox with a pipe or something like that. And then, I've had bad things happen. Like, I had my car hit in a parking lot, and basically the value went from a few thousand to $900, which I felt lucky to sell it for. And, I had a car wrongfully towed, and, beer thrown on it, and windows broken out and stuff. So, I've probably gotten what I've given, maybe a little bit. Who knows whether it's a little bit more or not. I mean, it's just, whatever you give, you're probably going to get in return, both good and bad. That just seems to be how, what goes around comes around. That just seems to be how things operate, how things work in the real world. Now, does that prove definitively that there is some divine intervention in this world? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. My theory there is always, if you have the capacity to think something exists, it probably can or does in some form. So there is that. Now, it might seem like a convenient cop-out to avoid facts or scientific proof, but science is just merely consistency or something that's occurred, or that's a generally accepted principle among humans. Like, for example, 2 + 2 = 4. We just all accept that 2 + 2 = 4. Or language, we just assume that eyes mean these two things that are in your head. It's just a general assumption that we make amongst ourselves, and makes it easier to communicate. It builds communities and fosters relationships and all that too. So it's definitely a great thing. And we're coming up to a break here pretty quick, ladies and gentlemen, but in the near future we're going to have good times, balls deep. The host of the show is super pumped up. He's working with sponsors right now. He's getting a lot of funding. He's probably going to construct a new studio with some good sound editing equipment, and he'll probably observe the fallacies of this show and be able to rectify them and make his show great again, just hit the ground running right away. Because he realizes the importance of making a good show right off the bat. Because if your first shows are just horrible and the sound quality is terrible, it's going to turn off a lot of viewers. So the objective behind his programming is to start with a lot of viewers and to grow it. Ours, we didn't really have an objective, so what we did is we started with a few viewers and then it just tanked after that. So it's not really an ideal scenario, but it happens. And the reality is, good times, balls deep. See, this show will basically be originally it was planning to be a promo for Good Times, Balls Deep, but since nobody really watches this anymore, it can't really be a promo for it, so it just, they can observe this show and learn what not to do, basically, is the reality of the story. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take looks like a 4-minute break here. We'll be back. I'm Rick Tex with Text Messages. I'm the Parasite. Welcome back to Text Messages, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're glad to be here on Sunday morning, May 20. Actually, it's May 20th, 2018. Excuse my error on the first segment there. Hopefully, I won't get sued for fake news. Probably will. Better figure out a good lawyer in the meantime. Looks like we're gonna have low 70s for a high today. It's sunny outside, so it's a great day to probably mow the lawn. Maybe, well, probably won't pull any weeds. The ground looks like it's a little too dry. But yeah, mowing the lawn and just spending out some time outside. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Looked like there's some weird animal messing around with the plants. I'll have to restart this computer now. You know, assuming it does restart. Yeah, there we go. Alright, yeah, excuse that slight delay. See, there's two big windows here. You can see outside. Maybe I should just go ahead and show you exactly what we're looking at here. So as you can see, we got these windows here. And you can see there's some strange animal kind of looking at us through those bars there. So yeah, that's what got my attention, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I apologize, extremely unprofessional. Yeah, there's our laptop and there's some fancy lighting device. And then hopefully these blankets can kind of cut down on some of the noise. Put a few pillows up next to here too. Maybe those will cut down on some noise too. And of course the research article, the pulpit, the mouse, and there's our green screen. And hopefully in a little bit, I'll be back again in front of it. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. I accidentally tripped over a cord there. Okay, so we're back on track here. It's going to be low 70s today. Sunny skies, great day to cut the lawn. Maybe go on a bike ride or something like that. I mean, if you don't have a yard to maintain, you may as well just get involved with other productive endeavors like that. Hang out with a few people, play some outdoor volleyball, badminton, tennis. Tennis is a great activity. You know, I always leave a bunch of, like the 15-year-old sound when a computer loads up. I always leave a bunch of junk in my car, like a basketball, a volleyball, tennis rackets, tennis balls, volleyballs, soccer balls, bowling balls, cinder blocks, just things that you can have. And you know, if you drive by a few tennis courts, you're thinking, oh yeah, I can hit around a ball a couple times and make myself great again, whatever the case may be. And especially a day like today, you know, if it's 70 and sunny, it's pretty much every day in San Francisco. But around here, these days are definitely to be treasured. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that one city is better than the other based on the weather conditions. It's good and it's very important to go through winter. The ground will go through the freeze, it'll hold in the moisture and the nutrients, and then it'll restart again in the springtime. Because one of the reasons why that's beneficial, and one of the reasons why the Great Plains of the Midwest have such valued farmland, is because, you know, it's because of the water table and the moisture that's always in the ground, and it doesn't, you know, it's not like Arizona where it's just a big desert or anything like that. It's just very fertile soil, nutrient rich, a lot of enzymatic, you know, bacteria activity. So that's why people flock to the Great Plains during the good old days to run their harvesters or to plant their fields and all that too. And even today, a lot of farming is located in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, all those states too. That doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist elsewhere. It just, most people, not anymore, but by land mass, most people probably make a living on farming in Minnesota here. Oh yeah, you got the North Woods and all that too, which is a great source of oxygen, and you know, the boundary waters where people go canoeing and kayaking and laugh and smile the whole time. That's another nice thing to have as well. Just if you ever go on vacation. Going up to Duluth is pretty fun too, or Two Harbors. Duluth, you know, they got those ships and everything. They're 1,000, 2,000 length ones, and they usually have coal or some type of earth minerals or resources. they're not like those big giant ships that are flocking the ports of the east and west coast with thousands of containers on them. They're just, they pick up corn or iron ore or taconite at the Duluth plant, and then they ship it out to somewhere else. Now, the Great Lakes do connect to the Atlantic Ocean, so there are international ships that'll come in every once in a while. They got their little flags on them too. I think when I was there, some ship from Libya came. Well, another time I was there, they had the shipping schedule out. So it looked like there was going to be 2 or 3 ships that one day, but then they just went ahead and they trashed it and said, oh, we're not going to have anybody come in. So the only ship that actually came through and that they actually had to raise a lift bridge for was some Coast Guard ship, which was very disappointing, but I guess that's the risk you take when you travel. See, traveling isn't always going to work out. You might get mugged on the street, or you might get arrested. I mean, things like that happen. I mean, that's just the risk you have to take. That's why going out of your comfort zone is fun, because you're taking a risk. It may not work out, and it may work out, but it's always memorable, and that's the important thing. That's kind of what we do. We try to make memories, money, and muscles. It's just that's the 3M of human nature. So all right, we're gonna get into some research articles here a little bit. So we've talked about Monsanto and how they like glyphosate and Roundup and all that. See, glyphosate is it's a chemical compound in Roundup, but it's not. Roundup has other formulas that bind to it and that are actually found to be more toxic than the glyphosate itself. But the glyphosate is the polemical ingredient that's always discussed in the news. Maybe not in the news, maybe not in national news or even local network news, but certainly the websites that I read. Now that doesn't mean I'm better or worse than anybody else for reading these websites. It's just, I usually read a few websites that are... See, these websites that I read are most consistent with what I've observed through my personal experiences with being healthy and all that stuff too, and just observing other people in society. So that's why I don't stick to them like gospel. I mean, I'll still hit up CNN every once in a while to see what they're saying and everything too. But so I think this was it might have been naturalnews.com. It says an appeals court says California can list herbicide glyphosate as carcinogen, and the state's trying to ban discharge into waterways. Well, they have banned it, and then that ban has stood according to the appeals court. One thing that's feared though is it'll likely go to the Supreme Court, as Monsanto is it's the enemy combatant of the ruling, and they probably have everybody in the high courts paid off. So I really should try to track this story, ladies and gentlemen, to see what exactly happens to it. Because, if you're a big company and a big corporation, you just got to pay off the people at the top, and then it'll trickle down to the bottom, and they'll get the message. I mean, if an appeals court rules against glyphosate and say, hey, no big whoop, just bring it to the Supreme Court where we got our boys in our pocket and gals, and they'll say it's totally fine, glyphosate is all good, and you could drink it straight and be great again. I mean, unfortunately, it's the world we live in. I hate to discuss somber topics with you, ladies and gentlemen at home. If we could just laugh and smile and have fun in games all the time, I probably would want to do that. But the reality is, our society is being sickened. We're being systematically dumbed down, and then the costs of healthcare are getting completely out of control. The United Nations is going into other countries, destabilizing them, disrupting them, trying to use refugees of those countries to supplant people in other countries, and then give them free medical care, and just the costs go completely out of control, and it's just a disaster. It's just a disaster for everybody. I mean, for the people whose countries get destroyed and wrecked and destabilized, it's for the people who are in countries that can't afford medical care anymore, and who are basically crapping their bridges anytime they got to go to a doctor because they don't know if it's going to cost $30,000 or $300, and nobody really tells you straight up. It's not like McDonald's where you go in and there's a list of food items and what it costs. If you go into a hospital if you almost cut your thumb off, they're not going to say, well, it's going to be $2,000 to fix that. It's, well, come in, we'll treat you, you'll get a bill later. Oh yeah, if you're a poor person, see, if you make under about $12,000 a year, you basically get free medical care, which is nice for, if you're under $12,000 a year. But the people who are the worst off are probably the ones between $15 to $25 an hour, which is probably the brunt of society, because you're not really making enough to get ahead, but you're probably making enough to get a reasonably comfortable lifestyle. But if any accident happens where you got to get some medical care, you're basically sort of on your own. And not only that, you're paying an enormous amount for insurance. And now the people making more than $30 an hour, yeah, you can live a pretty comfortable lifestyle. And something bad happens, you probably got a decent amount of money to pay for it. Now, with medical costs, you just never know. If you get into a car accident and you got to be in the hospital for 2 weeks, it might cost $200,000. So, even if you're making $100,000 or $200,000 a year, that's still a lot of money. But it's totally out of control. Which is why we advocate for being healthier. And yeah, there was a time I talked about hitting my thumb on a grinder, and I had to go into the hospital and everything too. But at that time I was remodeling this home, so I didn't have an exterior income. So probably for about a year, I was just remodeling this home. And yeah, I had the poor person's insurance then, so I was able to just basically not pay a damn thing, which was pretty nice for me. But somebody basically has to pay for it. I might be supplanting an honest citizen at the hospital, or the insurance company, or taxes probably paid for it or whatever, and Medicaid, whatever, and good, hardworking, morally upstanding men and women are footing the bill for that. So I am definitely indebted to good, positive people working hard every single day. And, as far as in the eyes of the Almighty, I'm sure they're seen as more favorable than I would if I were to constantly take advantage of those situations. But getting back to glyphosate here. So the World Health Organization's International Agency for Cancer Research stated that glyphosate was carcinogenic. But the US EPA found no link to cancer. The thing about cancer that makes it convenient for these companies is that it's a slow death. I mean, if you're exposed to glyphosate and right away you got cancer, they could say unequivocally, okay, yep, you're to blame. Like salmonella poisoning. If you get salmonella poisoning and you die in 3 days, they can say, all right, yep, you got salmonella, you're dead, it's their fault. But cancer is just slowly breaks down the cells in your body, and slowly tumors grow here and there and everywhere, and next thing you know, 20 years later, you're sick and run down, and then you're dead. But it doesn't happen for 20 years. So as long as it's a slow death, you can avoid, for a corporation, they can avoid litigation. And it's very difficult to prove that. You just have to sort of use common sense, which is, the pro-human, pro-liberty, pro-common sense is sort of the mottos that we go by. One other interesting side bit here is there's an independent researcher that also contradicted the International Agency for Cancer Research, but later found out that was just a Monsanto shill. He was taking some backdoor payouts and everything too. I mean, that's another thing. It's very difficult to track backdoor payouts. And as far as you, ladies and gentlemen at home, maybe I'm getting paid millions of dollars by some corporations to say what I'm saying. I mean, there's really no way to know. I mean, they could drop off a briefcase somewhere and I could go pick it up and enjoy life in the fast lane, and nobody would know. So that's why you can't, if people say, well, prove this or prove that, and it's like, well, you can't sometimes. You just have to use gut feeling, common sense, just observe what's going on in the big picture, and follow the money is a quote you'll hear a lot, but sometimes you can't follow the money. I mean, how is anybody going to know if somebody drops a briefcase off and I go pick it up and stick it in my house here? Nobody's going to know that. I mean, the person that dropped off the briefcase is going to know that, but nobody else is going to know that too. Or nobody else is going to know that at all. So that's just what I'm saying. I'm just using myself as an example, ladies and gentlemen. So I mean, because as far as I could just be a giant lying sack of feces, but I'm hoping that you can sort of read body language and know that that's not entirely the case. Now, yeah, there are a few topics that we'll discuss in jocular fashion. Like, for example, Bigfoot, he doesn't actually drive around the neighborhood with a giant truck with tractor tires and American flags on the back. And it's not a Ford, a late 80s Ford. Bigfoot doesn't travel with a truck. He's usually on foot. He's got a lot of fur on him, so it's probably uncomfortable to... He's pretty big too, so it's probably uncomfortable to sit in a regular vehicle. So Bigfoot doesn't drive in a truck. I know I've stated that before, but it was in jocular fashion. So just keep that in mind. We try to keep the mood light here. Don't want to get too serious and carried away and turn off the 2 or 3 of you guys that are left watching. So, that being said, it looks like we're coming up to a break here pretty quick. Now, I will get into this insomniac study next segment. Now, yeah, I mean, every individual has different ways of sleeping and all that too. So, it may or may not help you. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, I don't just read research articles and then state what they have on there word for word. I try to correlate it with my own personal experience. Now, my experience will be different than others, but if I see an article that says a bunch of things that totally contradict what I've learned from my existence, then I'll try to point that out. For example, the other day I was talking to this gentleman. I had to take some drug test. So I was walking around the neighborhood and I saw this gentleman with one of those old hand pumps. I was kind of asking him if it's still functional, if it works. He's like, yeah, it works, but this one is just for decorative purposes. So I asked him, or I said something about cheddar cheese, and he's like, oh, that stuff is so unhealthy. And I was kind of thinking, I mean, he really has no way to prove that it's unhealthy, but he's probably read maybe news articles or just heard it through the grapevine that cheddar cheese is unhealthy, which I thought was very ironic because cheddar cheese is, I probably eat about 400 to 600 calories of cheddar cheese every single day. Being Atkins dieter, you got to eat something, and lactose intolerant, you got to eat something that's high fat and good amount of protein. So cheddar cheese to me is an excellent source of food, and other people, they may perceive it as unhealthy, but I mean, it's just, yeah, if I see a research article that says cheddar cheese or saturated fats are unhealthy, it's just, I'm not going to sit here and disprove them, because for some people they may be unhealthy. If you're eating way too much fat and not exercising, yeah, it's unhealthy then probably, but everybody's a little different. Full disclosure there. Not everybody has had 76 centimeters of their intestines removed and their appendix removed and have all plastic teeth either. So there's definitely that to consider. So I'm just working with the half deck here and the canary in the coal mine basically. But in the near future, we're gonna have good times, balls deep. The host of the show is a very smart guy, erudite, scholarly. He reads a lot of books. He also works a lot too and has a family and friends and work, family, friends, health, hobby. He does all that stuff, gets into it all. So he's going to run a great show. It's going to be great. It's going to make St. Cloud great again. Sounds like he's pretty enthusiastic about it. Just ready to hit the ground running on 8 cylinders or 12 cylinders probably. So yeah, I'm just glad to hopefully be a part of it with some of the other guest hosts too. And in the meantime, though, you're listening to text messages I'm the parasite Rick Tex, and we'll be back in 4 minutes. Welcome back to Text Messages, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're glad to have you here on this Sunday morning, May 20th, 2018. We're broadcasting out of Elk River, Minnesota, which is probably about an hour west of the Wisconsin border. If you were to go to, it's right when you get into Wisconsin, there's River Falls, the college there and everything. So we're probably a good hour west of that. And if you're to go down to Rochester, Minnesota, we're probably 2 hours northwest of that. And Worthington, Minnesota, about 3 hours north of that. So wherever you're listening, wherever you may find yourself, that's about our relative location to where you may be located. Now, with that being said, looks like we got some sunny skies, low 70s for the high. So, one of the things we were going to talk about today was insomniac. And the reality is, you may hear debates a lot about whether people should get 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. For you yourself, it's ever changing based on your lifestyle. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean if you work harder, faster, longer, stronger, that you need to sleep longer. It just, you may need to sleep less then, or if you have dietary changes, or if you move to a different state or a different country or a different house, you might have different times that you need to sleep. For example, back in probably 2012 or something, I had this job where I just sat in front of a computer all day for 9 hours. It's the most boring job ever. Hated it, didn't really like it, didn't like myself, didn't like my country. And I found that, when you just sit down in front of a computer, you get a lot of back and neck aches and you don't really move around a whole lot. So, every day after work, I'd go hit up the Coon Rapids Lifetime Fitness and maybe slap some water around for an hour or so, and probably only swam about 1,500 yards, but it was enough to at least somewhat counter the effects of sitting on your ass all day, but to not be doing it so long that I didn't get any sleep, because it seemed that I would need about 9 hours of sleep time to not have a sore back or neck the next day. Now some people are opposite. They may need less sleep to not have a sore back or neck. If you got a more active job, then maybe you need less sleep, for example. How that works, the science behind it, I don't really know, but it's just trial and error with you yourself, that you can best figure out what's optimal for your lifestyle. Now, yeah, I know it sounds like a convenient cop-out for me to just say that, though I don't really have to do anything, I can just tell you that you need to experiment with your own life to see what works best. But the reality is, it is true. It is a minor cop-out. But now what I have here are a few tips they're just all-encompassing tips that can work for anybody. Me, you, your neighbor, anyone in America, basically. Okay, so there's a study done. The producers didn't write down who did the study. But not eating enough vegetables and gorging on junk food was one consistency that they found amongst insomniacs. Now, junk food is Laffy Taffy, McDonald's, extremely high trans fat, high sugars, just this horrible foods. If you get a lot of your calories from those sources, just eradicate them. Anybody for any reason can eradicate sugar from their diet, and trans fats too. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life. If you're trying to be the most unhealthy person, a miserable person, then yeah, eat as much sugar as possible and eat as much trans fats as possible. But if you want to basically do anything positive and productive, just get rid of sugars and trans fats. Most specifically sugars, though. Trans fats they're kind of a newer phenomena. 20 years ago, trans fats were probably just grouped in with saturated fats, and that's why saturated fats still have that unhealthy vibe to them. But the reality is, sugars have always been bad. They're always going to be bad. Now, there's different, the refined sugar that goes into Mambas and Skittles are way worse than the sugars that are in fruits or vegetables. So know your sources too. And that's same with meat. Meat that's grown in a lab is obviously going to be different than organically raised, pasture-fed cows that get to roam the countryside all day. So, the study involved 15,000 men. They just took a survey, asked them what their diet was, how they slept and all that stuff too. Now, yeah, it's not exact, it's not precise, but they just try to find consistencies. I mean, probably nobody else is gonna write down everything they eat like I do, and maybe if you feel sick or that you're a less than optimal person, maybe you should too. But so yeah, you're not gonna have pinpoint accuracy, but I mean, for the most part, people do have a lot of consistencies in what they eat every single day, and then they can pin it down pretty accurately. I mean, if you go eat at Culver's every day, you can say, yeah, I had a Butterburger today, a Jamocha shake the other day, a double stacker with extra cheese, and so it's a pretty good indicator. But yeah, I mean, if you're eating 20 different types of food every day, if you're eating almonds, pistachios, pecans, peanuts, cheddar cheese, Monterey Jack cheese, Skittles, Diet Pepsi, a hamburger with pickles, olives, onions, tomatoes, the lettuce for a bun, and if you're eating some sweet potato French fries, cheese sticks that are fried in coconut oil, and you're eating some egg rolls with gluten-free crust, then you're eating a pizza with cheddar cheese, mozzarella cheese, American pork, pepperoni, Canadian bacon, black olives. And if you're eating some tacos with the corn tortilla shell that doesn't have any of the trans fats in it, you got organically raised beef in that, and cheese and lettuce and tomatoes, guacamole and sour cream. It's pretty hard to remember all that stuff in one day, so that's why usually after every meal I'll write down all the junk I ate, and then got a pretty good idea of how many calories it was, and if anything funny happens with my digestive system or get weird headaches or something, I'll be able to trace it back to that. You know, not always, but most of the time. You know, like the other day, I think I might have ate some bad avocado, or a bad avocado, because for 2 days, I felt like crap after I ate a certain meal, and that was about the one consistency. Now, it is important to try to, do a little bit of trial and error. For example, this morning I thought that maybe it was the avocado or the black olives, so I took out the black olives and then I added them back in this morning, and I seem to feel fine now. So yeah, it probably was the avocados, and it changes. You might get a can of bad black olives once, and you got to throw them all away, or you let them sit on your shelf for too long, and now they're moldy, and you can't use them anymore. So things can always change, and it's not always just one thing that's the culprit too. I mean, there might be foods that interact with each other that become bad, or maybe you didn't wash your hands before you ate, and you grabbed a bunch of food and you had chicken feces all over your hands. So that's another source of potential ailments as well that you should consider, ladies and gentlemen. So getting back to the insomnia. So a couple of ways to beat insomnia: cut back on coffee and alcohol before you sleep. Those both increase nighttime urination. One of the things that I've noticed, when I eat a lot of carbohydrates, before I would go to bed, I would eat just a giant bowl of cereal, probably 1,000 calories worth. And I probably had to get up about 3 or 4 times for nighttime urination. And now that I'm on mostly the high fat, high protein, maybe twice at the absolute most, I'll have to get up in the middle of the night, but sometimes it's once, and oftentimes I don't even have to get up anymore. And, I'm getting older now, so technically you'd think the older you get, the worse off you should be. But the reality is, if you're eating healthy, you could probably be a healthy person into your 90s. Back in elementary school, you'd always hear about so-and-so's grandpa died. He was 90 years old and he fell into a combine. He was still working too. It's just, as soon as you start sitting around, then things go south in a hurry. Which is why it's important to always be of the mindset that you're always going to have to work. Your body's always going to have aches and pains occasionally. If you weed the garden for 3 hours, yeah, it's gonna be uncomfortable at times. You're gonna have sore knees and maybe a sore back, but you get over it, and it allows you to be great the next day. And as long as you're sleeping plenty and eating healthy, your body will be able to recover, and that's what it wants to do. It wants to be challenged and successful and reward you with a weedless garden or weedless tulips or strawberry patch. If you got awkward noises that are causing you to awaken, For example, if you live in big city nights, big city lights, and people are honking their horns at 3 o'clock in the morning and things like that wake you up, you can try a white noise generator, so it just keeps a constant noise, and then once your ears get used to that, and like, I'm not saying have some loud stereo in your room and play that all night, just a fan or something like that, or maybe fans, you got the electromagnetic radiation, all that junk too, so I mean, it would be not just maybe some mechanical device, that a perpetual motion device that makes noise, something like that, just to cut down on the sudden noises that could awaken you. Now sometimes I'll wake up in the middle of the night because the water softener will turn on and it gets pretty loud sometimes. So yeah, just closing a door to a bathroom with a water softener in it could be the difference between waking up in the middle of the night, not waking up in the middle of the night. Limit use of technology an hour before bed. They interfere with melatonin levels and shorten REM cycles. Now this means if you have a cell phone, try to keep it out of your room. If you use it as an alarm clock, then try to keep it as far away from you as possible. And if you got TVs, computer screens, and that stuff too, just when you watch them, your brain thinks it's sunlight, so it wants to stay up longer and later. So if you avoid them, cut them off several hours before you go to bed, then you're going to sleep better too. And I found that it's somewhat of a good idea to read a book before you go to sleep too. Just have it at the end of your bed or something, and when you lay down, then you can read that. And before you know it, you'll be out like a light. Exercise during the day. Just try to, if you don't expend any energy during the day, it's going to be a bit more hard to sleep at night then. Because, you have more energy stored up, and eventually your body will figure out just to store it as fat, so then unless your body doesn't store fat like a lot of people do. Some people when they get, see, here's the thing, here's one of the biggest misperceptions in our society. People assume that the skinnier they are, the healthier they are. I even fell for that trap too. But the fact is, if you're, like everything, you got to have a good balance. You can't be too skinny or you can't be too big of a barrel ass, because if you're too skinny, you don't have any muscles, you're not even going to be able to lift yourself, you're going to get sore just doing mundane tasks like mowing the lawn. So, and then you're more prone to back and neck pain as well, because you don't have any of the cushion. You don't have any muscle or the fat to cushion your skeletal system. So that's why it's important to be of reasonable weight and not get too far in one end or the other. Everybody's body type is different. Somebody 300 pounds might be like the world's strongest man, Mark Henry. If he was 300 pounds, for him that'd probably be a healthy body weight. For me, if I was 300 pounds, I'd probably have to shoot up with needles every other day and work out a lot and eat a whole bunch of food and probably not be very good. But for the world's strongest man, it's about right. Dim lights in house before bed at least 1 hour. So around here I rely a lot on natural lighting, so it's a little easier to sleep at night then, because there are a few lights that come on at night, but for the most part it's just when the sun's down, it gets pretty dark in here. So then naturally the tendency is to go to sleep by that point. So if your house is the same way too, then you can definitely utilize that principle as well. So it looks like we're coming to the conclusion of the show, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have good times, balls deep in the near future. Sounds like he's going to have a panel of guests or of co-hosts on the show, and maybe they'll watch UN meetings or when senators question people, maybe they'll dub their own account of or their own answer to the questions in. So should be an interesting show. I'm pumped for it. We've reached episode 40 of text messages, and good times, balls deep is still in the future. It's coming at us fast though. It's like a freight train. You can hear it off in the distance, and the rumbling and tumbling and bumbling and stumbling. So it's going to hit us pretty soon. And when it does hit us, it's going to hit us hard, fast, ferociously, tremendously, with great resolve. And it's going to just be a great show. I'm extremely confident in the host of the show that he'll be able to put out quality programming, and and stay focused and concentrated on making communities great again, and hopefully America great again too. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Text Messages on the Parasite of the show, Rick Tex. Looks like we'll probably be back on Tuesday evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching.